Hello, and welcome to this episode of Standing Apart, the podcast that explores why being different is a superpower, with me, Nigel Ridpath. This week's show centres on an interview I recorded recently with John Terry, Artistic Director at Chipping Norton Theatre. John explains how a small theatre is thriving in an environment where most other similar theatres have gone to the wall. It's a heartwarming tale of how a not-for-profit has really stood apart. Not to detract from the interview, I've paused my regular features, my 1-minute rant and superhero of the week. They'll be back soon. John and I had our discussion in the theatre rather than down the line, which provides a rather dramatic acoustic. I hope it doesn't detract too much from this fascinating interview. So I'm delighted to say that I'm joined today by John Terry, who is Artistic Director at the Chipping Norton Theatre. Good afternoon, John.
Hi, thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Really looking forward to our chat today. Should we start off with a little bit of background? Tell us a little bit, first of all, about the theatre.
Okay, so the Theatre Chipping Norton, or Chippy Theatre as it's known colloquially around here. We're a small art centre and theatre in the Cotswolds. We have just over 200 seats. We're in Chipping Norton's quite a small town, 7 and a bit thousand people, I think. But we get about 50,000 people a year through the doors. We have theatre at the very heart of what we do, but we also show a lot of comedy, music, live music. We have a very famous pantomime that we're known for, and then a huge range of activities working right through our community.
And set the scene in terms of the theatre space itself. Was it always designed as a theatre?
No, it was actually originally a Salvation Army citadel.
Right.
So we're in a very small residential street in this little Cotswold town. Turns out the small residential street, which looks very pretty and like lots of American tourists might come and choose to buy a house here these days, but it used to be the red light district of Chipping Norton.
That I didn't know.
Yeah, and so the building that we now have our bar in used to be a gin palace. And so the Salvation Army built a citadel right next door to try and bring a bit of morality and good behaviour to the iniquities of Chipping Norton. Would you believe it? That was in the 1870s. It was a Salvation Army. We've been a theatre since 1974. Okay. 2 actors from the Royal Shakespeare Company wandered over here into Chipping Norton on a day out and discovered what was then a derelict building.
Right.
And decided that they would take it over and try and run a little theatre here. Yeah. And we've expanded a little bit with adding a couple of buildings that we now have our offices and our bar and rehearsal space in. But ultimately, we are still a very small organisation in that small footprint of the original Salvation Army building.
And tell me a bit about your involvement with the theatre. When did you start? How what attracted you to the role, and how things have evolved over the period that you've been working here?
Sure. Well, I've been here 17 years now, which I think comes as a surprise to me. But here I am, and it's a place that has changed so much in the 17 years that I've been here that it's always been a new challenge. There's always been a new chapter starting that has kept my interest here. It's actually, we've only had 3 directors in the 50 odd years that the theatre's been going. So perhaps that's quite expressive in a way about the relationship that the theatre has with the people that run it. Like a lot of people, I started out at school doing some school plays and that sort of thing, but quite quickly began to feel my shortcomings as a performer, and realized that there was something that I could do that would mean that I didn't have to stand up and make a fool of myself on stage, and could, as a side benefit, be in charge of everything. So I quite like that. So from about 17 onwards, I was directing plays, and studied theatre at university and went into a career as a freelance theatre director.
Okay.
Which is very much an exercise in rubbing two halfpennies together and trying to find a way of paying the bills. And after a decade or so in London of doing shows across a lot of London venues and some touring work and Edinburgh Fringe and that sort of thing, I was looking for a different way of being. I found the self-employed lifestyle very stressful, not knowing where your next job was going to be coming from, and saw an advert for the job here in Chipping Norton. And I must admit, it looked like the most sort of remote end of the pier. Why would anybody work there? You might as well be on Mars. Kooky little place from the advert and from the pictures that I saw of it. But I came along for a meeting and I saw a show in the auditorium, and the auditorium is still this very beautiful Victorian feeling building. It has a lot in common with an old Victorian or Edwardian music hall in the feel of the building. So it's a very beautiful place to see work, to see a live show. So that was pretty compelling. And I met all the staff, and it felt you had this sort of sense of this kind of close, creative working family here. And I thought I'll give this a go. And I grew up as a country boy, so it appealed to me coming back to the countryside. We're quite rare these days in being a small producing theatre outside of a metropolis. There are not many of us left doing that, and that was a real appeal then, as it is now.
And that's one of the main reasons I wanted to have you onto the Standing Apart podcast, because, as you said, the theatre is about a 200 seater venue. It produces its own shows. These things are rare. We've seen many small venues go to the wall over the last 20, 30 years. What do you think has been the key reasons why the theatre continues to thrive to this day when others have really struggled?
Yeah, I mean, theatre is by its nature not a very scalable business. It's very much about human beings. You need quite a lot of people to put a show on, not just the people that you see on stage, who are actually there and have to be paid every night. You don't get to just pay them the once. They have to be there every night. There's lots of people working backstage. There's the marketing teams. There's the people who help to bring the audience in and take your tickets and sell you a drink and so forth. And it's also quite people-centric in terms of the experience. You are getting people together in a room and giving them that experience, which means it's very out of sync with our times. Where everything is about how can you take a product and make it very efficiently scalable, digitally, whatever, across a much wider audience. I think ultimately that's why we're still here. That's the attraction of it, is that it's still, it becomes an increasingly valuable experience to be in contact with other humans, to be in a room with them, to be sharing an experience together, and for the performance that you're seeing to actually be there, to be unique and one-off there in front of you in the flesh. So I think in a broad sense, that's the attraction of live performance and remains so. And actually, we have a cinema program here, and we're really struggling with audience numbers to get people in and watching films in a cinema context as we used to. But our live performance numbers are stronger than ever. And I think there remains an appetite, if not an actually growing appetite, for a non-screen, live in the flesh experience. And I suppose once you grant that concept, being in a building where you are even closer to the experience, where it's right there in front of you, where the worst seat is, you could still kind of virtually reach out and touch the performers, makes it all the more appealing. So I think people have a very special relationship with a good community theatre. I think we see that all over the country. But I think we've always been quite singular in our approach. as an organization. We're a little bit eccentric. We like to do things our own way. We are not really beholden to many people. So we have fantastic support from some of our local authorities, from local individuals, from trusts and foundations, but we don't have a single big stakeholder.
Yeah.
Be that the Arts Council or our local council or whatever. We own our own building. We can sort of do what we want a little bit, which for us means doing what our audience wants us to do rather than doing what a particular stakeholder thinks that we should be doing.
Yeah.
So we've been able to continue to plough our own furrow quite determinedly, and to keep quite a particular character about the place, which I think if any of your listeners have been here or come and have a look around, come and see a show here, I think is quite readily apparent that you have entered a place that's not quite like anywhere else you've been before. And one of my great pleasures in being the artistic director here, when having 50,000 people come through the door each year, you obviously don't know all of your audience members. There'll be lots of people who I couldn't recognize, who I don't know their names, who I couldn't greet them. But I see these people come in, perhaps they brought a friend or they brought some family, and they show them around the theatre that I run as if it's their own front room, as if they've just bought the place and they're kind of going, look through here. Isn't this wonderful? Come and have a look at this. And I think that sense of ownership and that sense of pride is shared by a lot of people who therefore want to look after us.
Yes. I remember the first time I came into contact with the theatre, we were looking at moving to the area from another part of England, and we came in and wandered into the box office and just see what it was all about. And the day before, you'd run a movie that had Sir Ben Kingsley in it, and the person at the box office was telling me, well, of course, Sir Ben lives quite near here, so he just offered to come and do a Q&A before or after the movie, because he could see it was on, yeah, although that's not an experience you're going to get every day, I do think it's indicative of how everybody, including, let's face it, very big movie stars who happen to live locally, do see this as a community asset. And, obviously he was more than happy to give up his time to do that, because living 3 miles away, he felt as much as part of the community as any of the rest of it.
I had an experience when I was a teenager, which I think has really shaped my approach to running the theatre here. I used to work in a little pub up in the Oxfordshire, Berkshire Downs. It's called the Bell in Aldworth. And it's been a pub pretty much since the 1300s. It's been run by this one family for 6 generations. And they absolutely do things their own way. They don't have a till. They don't have lager or cider on tap. They just have real ales. The floors are still flagstones. The bar is glassed in and you serve through these little hatches. The only food they do is hot, crusty rolls. And my experience as a teenager was going there and working on the bar and experiencing the love that people felt for this place. Yeah. And on a bank holiday, they might get 700 or 800 people through this tiny little rural pub because there was nowhere else quite like it.
Yeah.
And I think that really stayed with me, that if you want people to support you, whether that's as an audience member or by becoming a friend or being a patron or a supporter, then the more you are unlike anywhere else, the more likely you are to achieve that. So I think keeping that little bit of eccentricity, that little bit of kind of oddness about how you do things is really important. We make our own shows here. We create theatre performances here that either just exist here or sometimes go out on tour. But again, it's an exercise in kind of saying, this is ours. If you want to see this show, come and see it here because you might not see it anywhere else. So I think that's been a big part of our standing apart, is kind of allowing ourselves to have quite a defined character, which maybe not everybody will like, or maybe it's not what everybody's looking for. But it's not clinical, it's not corporate, it's not neutral. It's quite statedly us.
Yeah. And so tell me a little bit about the mechanics of producing a show and why it's almost unheard of for a venue of this size to be doing that activity.
Yeah, well, obviously making a show becomes even more of a kind of financial nonsense, really, because then you've got to spend the time rehearsing it and building it, and with only 200 people in the audience, it's impossible for us on most of our productions to even cover the costs of what we had to spend to make it. We have been a beneficiary of the theatre tax relief scheme, which sounds very boring, but actually it has been a really interesting exercise in supporting theatres in making work. So rather than supporting us to just be here, to be a bricks and mortar asset for the town, a lot of, well, really the only sort of central government support that we receive now comes as part of the exercise of making a new show. So that helps to really encourage us and support us to do that. But often what we then need to do is we need to work with other venues as co-producers, or we take a show out on tour, and that helps us to kind of recoup the cost. So our next show coming up, we're working with the Reduced Shakespeare Company, with original members of the Reduced Shakespeare Company, to do a new version of their complete works of William Shakespeare, abridged, which is all 37 plays within 90 minutes. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's an incredibly comic exercise. It's a real sort of legend of the theatre world. It ran in the West End for 9 years, but it hasn't been out for quite a while, and we wanted to kind of revisit it and make a new version of the show for new audiences, for younger audiences. It's a really one of the reviews, I think it was the Today Show, said if you love Shakespeare, you'll love this. If you hate Shakespeare, you'll love this. So it's very clever in the way that it approaches that. But so we start with that show. We run it for about 13 or 14 performances here in Chipping Norton, and then it goes out on tour. And I think altogether the tour is over 120 performances, right, running from February through to July. We are pretty much the smallest venue on the tour. It's playing 5, 6, 7, 800 seat theatres. Yeah. So that then enables us each time we put it out to take a little bit of money back and cover the cost of making the show in the first place.
Right. Okay. I mean, the other thing that I do know is something that is again fairly unique to this venue, that is vital in terms of its survival, and that's the panto. We're sitting here in early January, and there are just a few more performances left of this year's show. Give us an insight, and also bear in mind that some of our listeners are from overseas, so probably won't have any idea about what panto's all about. Yeah. But why that show works and its significance in keeping this venue alive.
Yeah. Well, I mean, pantomime, it sort of dances around that idea of uniqueness in some ways. It's sort of the most ubiquitous theatre form in the UK, in as much as a lot of theatres which don't show a lot of drama, a lot of venues which perhaps don't make their own work, all over the country will have a pantomime. It tends to be, it's more often than not, young people's first encounter with live theatre will be coming to a pantomime, either with their family or with their school. It's a very kind of mongrel form of entertainment that's kind of a mixture of commedia dell'arte and Victorian music hall and variety shows and stand-up comedy and Christmas shows and all sorts of things mixed together into this very particular mix. We also get a lot of visitors from overseas come and see the show, come and see our pantos because they have quite a good reputation. And it's a very intriguing experience watching them discover this new art form. It's very, very interactive with the audience. So the audience have a lot of things that they shout out or that they sing or that they get involved with. So it's unique to the UK in many ways, but it's very, very common here. And obviously it is in that sense, it's a very crowded marketplace. We are lucky because we have a 53-year reputation of making pantomimes. We started in the town hall before the theatre was even finished being renovated with 4 performances. This year we're running 97 performances. So you can see how much that's grown, and getting sort of 16,500 people through our 200-seat auditorium. So we've built on that reputation, and our reputation for the pantomime here is that we have an original script every year. We have original music composed every year, whereas most pantomimes use pop songs. We also choose not to work with celebrities. That's another big part of pantomime culture, is that it will contain somebody off the telly who you recognize. Whereas ours, whilst it is a pantomime, it has a dame, it has the ridiculous comedy routines, it has 200 suites a show that get thrown at the audience, it has all of those things. It's more of an original piece of work. It's quite centered on the storytelling. It's quite sort of boutique in that sense. And I think people do come from far and wide, certainly from London or across the south of England, but we have bookers who come each year from the States. We have bookers from Japan, from Italy, people who come because it is such a particular cultural experience. But because it has 97 performances, it is the one show of the year where we can actually make a profit on it. Yeah. And it helps us to cover the costs of the rest of the year.
Yeah. Okay. We were talking about the people that you will always need behind a performing arts venue. And so I guess one of the, just coming back to the commercial side of it for a second, if you're a 600, 700 seat venue, presumably your fixed overheads are not 3 or 4 times what they would be for an organisation like this. Is that one of the main factors in what has led to many smaller venues closing in the UK?
Yeah, absolutely. You still need all the same things as a 200-seater that a 700-seater needs. You still need a brochure and a website, and you still need a bar and a car park and all the rest of it. So yeah, that is a challenge. And as I say, I think we kind of counter that by trying to be somewhere that's quite special, that people will want to come to. One of our challenges here is, as some of your listeners may know, Chipping Norton has a reputation for being quite a wealthy place, for being a wealthy area. And there is some truth to that. There is money in this area, and some of those people are kind enough to help support the theatre. And I think we definitely benefit from being in an area that has some wealth. But the town itself is actually very unequal. There are areas of Chipping Norton that still experience, and it's very well evidenced that they still experience a lot of deprivation, whether that's about around lack of access to education, lack of access to employment, whether that's about drugs, whether that's about young male suicide, and all of the other challenges of our age, like, new refugee populations, traveller populations, things like that. And I think it's really incumbent on us, as being quite a large organisation in this small town, relative to this small town, to play a role in helping the community to coalesce. And I think that's a really big part of what we do. And in many ways, that's what we're often fundraising for, because that type of work doesn't tend to pay its way. Yeah. It is to support that work that is quite, for example, in this day and age, we do a lot of work around mental health. So often you might be running a workshop for young people with mental health challenges. You might only be able to cater to 6 young people, and you might need 2 or 3 practitioners to do that. So it's quite an expensive exercise, but it's a really important part of why we're here and why we deserve to be supported, why we are a charity, and people donate money to us, is that we make a really measurable social impact on our community.
And putting some further colour around that, I think probably the performance I've most enjoyed watching in the theatre was the community production that you put on for the anniversary year. Or rather, there were two events. Describe those a little bit to us and what they meant to the community.
Yeah, so that it was part of our 50th anniversary celebrations, and we thought, let's do something really stupid. So we put on two productions, which between them had a cast of 85 performers, whether those were musicians or Morris dancers or actors, young people, older people, professionals, amateurs. It was a real mix. We did a production of Lark Rise to Candleford, which we did in Promenade, which means removing all of the seats and the audience and the performers being all mixed up together. So it was a very communal, very social experience, and a premiere of a new play by one of the UK's most respected playwrights, Mike Bartlett, which is a new piece called Barn Dance, which was imagining the life of a family who lived, well, really the life of a barn in a village local to us here in Chipping Norton, and how that had changed over the space of about 100 years. So they were very exciting events to put on. We had to really kind of busk our way towards making something with a kind of on that sort of scale, but it became a real town event. It became an event that felt like it was a milestone, not just for us and our nearest and dearest, but for the town as a whole, to talk about itself, to reflect on itself as a community. What's it like to live in a place like Chipping Norton in 2026? What was it like 100 years ago, 150 years ago? So that was a really exciting way of reaching out, working with our community and combining, if you like, our community and our creative roles into one project.
I was completely taken with it, you know, as you say, in Lark Rise to Candleford, sitting on a hay bale in the middle of the action, not quite knowing where to look left or right for the next piece of action. I've been fortunate enough to see some of the world's greatest performers in theatre, but I have to say, given almost all of that cast were non-professional, many had never been on a stage before. The quality and the sense that you were effectively just reliving a piece of history from this area 120 years or so ago, and that sense of being part of something so local and community focused, just was completely heartwarming. And like I say, it's one of the best pieces of theatre I've ever seen. So,
and I think you have to, I think it means that you think differently about what commercial means.
Yeah.
There are some commercial exercises, like, for example, we get some fantastic big name comedians here. We might have Michael McIntyre, or we might have Jenny Eclair or whoever come and perform here. And we know that we can make good money off that. Although to a degree it's deceptive, because of course usually about 3/4 of the ticket income goes back to the visiting artist.
Yeah.
But we know that that's a good commercial venture for us. We can sell a lot of drinks, we can sell a lot of tickets. That will pay our bills for a couple of weeks. But there is a sort of slightly more lateral sense of kind of commercial good sense as well, which is to do something that is unique, that people get really excited about, and the benefits of that come back to you in a lot more diverse ways, whether that's people joining up to be part of our Friends scheme, whether that's people making a donation, or supporting the next project that comes along, that we say we need some support to make this happen, and people feel, well, I had the fantastic experience like at Lark Rise, that was like nothing I'd ever been to, I'd like to support this next one. So it becomes a different kind of sense of how you pay the bills, a bit more devious perhaps.
So let's look into the future a little bit. So obviously 51 years now this venue's been going. as you mentioned earlier, 17 years of your tenure looking after the artistic side. What do you see as the kind of opportunities and challenges for Chippy Theatre in the next 5 years or so?
I think we are very intent on two areas, particularly at the moment. One is around the creation of in-house work. It's quite hard to get really good touring drama productions at our kind of scale who can afford to come to a 200-seater, which means that to some extent we do need to rely on making our own work to make sure that the shows that our audiences really want to see or are going to be really excited about seeing and really moved and inspired by, that we can make them and show them here. So I think that's an area that we want to continue to sort of grow and solidify. And a lot of that is about kind of partnerships, finding the right people to work with, that we can make a show here that can also then go off to Cirencester or Ipswich or wherever, and find a home there that will be of mutual benefit. And then I think the other area is really consolidating the work that we do around community social impact. We're quite responsive in how we work, so we have our ear to the ground. We have a lot of partnerships in the community, whether that's with food banks or churches or schools, smaller charities, who can help to guide us in terms of what the town needs. So one area that we're about to try and expand into quite substantially is around work for older people, and that sort of what kind of creative activities, creative experiences do people aged 50 plus, and I'm pretty much in that bracket myself.
No, certainly am.
Indeed, but from that age right through to significantly older people in care homes.
Yeah.
What are the experiences that they're looking for? What are the creative activities that they want to play a part in? How do we engage with it around areas like Parkinson's and dementia to make sure that as many people as possible are having a creative life? So that's an area that we want to grow into, but it is, as I said earlier in the podcast, it is a very expensive area to work in.
Yeah.
So working out how we can do that without bankrupting ourselves, without living too close to the edge. So I think those are the areas that we're really excited about working into over the next 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, John, it's been really fascinating to catch up with you and hearing about everything that's going on at Chippy Theatre as my local venue. I'm extremely proud of it, and it's I think thinking of it less as a venue and more as a community asset is kind of like been the signature of this talk, and I think that's how it feels to everyone locally. So, John, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. And if any of your listeners would like to know more about us, they can find us at chippingnortontheatre.com, and that will tell you more about the organisation, about the work, and perhaps we'll see a few of them through the doors over the next year or two as well.
I can only encourage that. Thank you. I really loved that chat with John. I've always enjoyed spending time with creatives, and it's valuable to reflect on the theatre's approach to survival. These are such tough times for venues like this, but by putting itself in the heart of the community, Chippy Theatre not only survives, but thrives. It got me reflecting on how creativity is in short supply in many sectors. In many ways, that's the whole ethos behind this podcast. To stand apart, you need to get creative. But it usually takes elements of confidence and even bravery. But as someone who gets a huge amount of satisfaction from getting creative, I can tell you that it's also a whole lot of fun. When was the last time you did something truly creative in your organisation? Could you resolve to some innovation in the workplace in the next few days? I'd love to hear from you if you've been inspired to action. I put a link to the theatre website in the show notes. If you're ever in the area, you really won't regret checking out their programme. And thanks once again to John for his time. That's almost it for this episode. I hope you've heard something you can put to work in your business straight away. If you have, do someone a favour and share this episode with them. All past episodes are still available, including our deep dives into health tech and my recent two-parter about digital labour, so do have a browse. The next episode will feature an interview with Laura Thompson on her book on values-based leadership. To ensure you don't miss that, make sure you subscribe. My own book, The Time Traveller's Guide to Management, is out in February. I've put a link to purchase in the show notes. And a quick reminder, this show only grows if listeners like you back it. The algorithms will not do it for us. So if you can, hit subscribe, leave a rating, and tap that like button in your podcast app. It helps more than you might think. Thanks for spending this time with me. Until next time, whatever you do, stand apart from the crowd. Standing Apart is a Sun Bear Consulting production.